a bunch of other stories, and
The stories you have are phenomenal. Like no one can compare to your stories.
and I'll probably share more of those stories. I want you to share your stories though.
I actually wrote some down because we were planning this for a couple weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I remember that I had. You talk about the ghost disappearing. I have a story that. Oh, by the way, for everyone listening, these stories actually happen, but in a sense that I was too young to comprehend everything that was going on. So when I was growing up, I had a godmother who wasn't technically family. She was a friend of the family, but we accepted her as family, like how you did with your godfather, right? Your godfather. So I have an older brother and older sister, and when we were growing up, my parents would leave to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they would come home like at 10 or 11, leaving their second or third job. So my godmother Mary would take care of us. So in a way, I grew up with Mary, and I had this very strong connection with her. Like she was a mother, a friend, a person to help you in a time of need. She was amazing.
A great person.
She was just wonderful, and suddenly she had got really sick, and then it was on a Monday or it was the Sunday night that they took her to a hospital. And Monday morning, she passed away from a gallbladder, and she suffered from type 2 diabetes. And when she died, I was 9 years old. I didn't know what...
So she died of complications?
Complications, yeah. I didn't understand what death was, and I didn't have any beliefs or religion. I mean, technically, I was raised as a Catholic, but I didn't...
No. Yeah, I mean, you're really young. I mean...
9 years old when it happened.
So at that age, it's really hard to comprehend. Like when my grandmother died, I believe. I knew why people were crying, but I didn't like. It
didn't make sense.
It felt alien to me because that was the first. That was like literally like the first that I could remember. First funeral that I could remember. Like I remember bits and pieces of my great grandfather and great grandmother when they.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's how I felt.
But when my grandmother passed away, like I remember like pretty much a lot of what I felt bad because I wasn't crying, and then because I felt bad that I wasn't crying, I started crying.
Yeah, I get it.
So it was like one of those things where it's just weird. And
it's foreign.
It's an alien experience.
It really is, yeah. December 6th of this year would be 10 years since she died. The 10th it was the rosary, and the 11th was the burial. And I remember it so perfectly. Like it's one of those things you don't want to remember, but for me, it's something that I remembered like to the detail. And what's interesting is that at the rosary, of course, they had the deacon, saying the rosary, which I don't really understand. Like they don't have the priest anymore. Rarely they do.
Yeah, I mean,
Right. I mean, that was always my assumption. Like you have a.
I really don't know how all that works.
So we were there, and as you know, like every funeral home has pews that lead up to the casket, which is like the main, like, viewpoint. That's where everyone's focused on. Well, this funeral home had pews to the foot of the casket, so it was lining up in the front, but where the foot of the casket was, there was pews, and so it was my father, my mother, my grandmother who lived with Mary, and then it was me, my sister, and then my brother. This was in the front, not on the side. And as the deacon was saying the rosary, I looked over to the pews that were on the side where the foot of the casket is. Oh, my voice cracked. And I swear that I saw her sitting there in the second pew, looking at herself in the casket, and she was wearing the same exact clothing.
Yes, she was in the casket.
Yeah, she was, and I thought, what the heck? It was a point where, or a time that I didn't know whether if I was just hallucinating or like if
You were just missing her so much that you were just
visualizing her.
yeah.
But she was so real. Like even a vision can't compare to the realness, you know.
And you didn't bother to tell anybody or anything?
That's the point. I was on the verge of telling my mom, but I didn't want her to cry or upset her in any way because when it comes to Mary, it's a very sensitive subject that we don't really talk about. But I didn't know what to do. I was gonna tell my sister because she was right next to me, but I didn't want her to cry either. I didn't want them to like think that I'm crying for attention or anything. So I just sat there the whole time looking at Mary, looking at herself and the deacon. And when he was finally done with the rosary, she stood up. And I remember that someone who, I think someone on her side of the family, but they never really visited her.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they had touched.
It's like one of those seasonal relatives.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. If you're listening to this, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's like one of those relatives that you only see during funerals.
Yeah, exactly. Funerals and weddings.
Yeah.
And they had touched me on the shoulder. And I didn't want to look away because I had that feeling that if I looked away now, she's going to be gone. But I didn't want to be rude, so I turned around. I looked back, and she's waving at me specifically. And I thought, that's it. There's no way that this is fake. Like this, she's really here. And she turns around, and she's walking towards the wall. And before she touches the wall, a huge light opens, passes through, and she disappears. Yeah. Not like how in your story, like how you saw it. Well, I saw
like she walked like through the light, and after she walked through the light, like
the light turned off,
faded away,
and she was gone. And I thought, oh my goodness. And that leads into my second story, that because so now I'm a Christian, and I believe that people who believe in God and have a relationship with him, go to heaven. But there's much more to it, so I don't mean to offend anyone, so I'm just going to say that. But back then, I didn't have a religion. I knew of God, but I didn't believe. And so each day I prayed. I said, Lord, please, I got to know, like, is she okay? If she's fine, where's she at? For 8 years straight, and I think it was a day before her 9-year anniversary. 8-year, no, because this year's the 9th. I had this vision when I went to sleep, and I know for dang sure it was not a dream, that she came to me, and she was on top of these white stairs, like kind of like Grease.
Okay, yeah,
in that scene with her name, the one with the blonde hair. I mean not the blonde hair, the pink hair. When she sees her guardian angel. For those of you who watch Grease.
Oh, Grease, the movie.
The movie,
I thought you meant like Grease, like the country.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. The one with the pink hair, the one that the beauty school dropout.
Yeah, that scene. How he was on top of the white stairs.
Yeah.
It was just like that, but she didn't have her cane. She wasn't hunched. And I thought, oh my God. She says, do not worry where I'm at, because I'm fine. Do not cry over me. I'm okay. Everything's going to be all right. Just let it be. And I woke up and I said, did she just say, let it be? Like, she came to me. And it was just, oh my God. Like, this happens to a lot of people. But when it does, it's very rare. Like, it's something that you wish doesn't end. And that's when I started believing that there are spirits. They're, in a sense, they're ghosts. And ever since then, actually, I remember earlier I was telling you that there was something that happened to me 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. Now, this was just as spooky as the hotel story. And in a way, it was spooky. It was scary for me to, like, go through this, what happened. But it also was peaceful, if that makes sense. A friend of mine who lives on the other side of the street, I think like behind you, she had a grandfather that passed away 2 months ago, and they were like real close. Like they did everything together. She loved him, he loved her, and he had passed away from stage 4 cancer. He found out on Friday, died Sunday night, I think it was, and 2 weeks later they had the burial, and she invited me to it because she didn't want to. She wasn't alone, but she didn't want to stand there to see him be lowered by herself. So I went with her, held her hand, and because I've been to funerals, there's been funerals that I've been to. I've been to 21 funerals within the past 9 years, and so I know how they work, and I know what it's like to just watch them. This is the final curtain call. So I was there, and after the funeral, they went to the reception, and I didn't really want to go because, I don't really know her family that well, and I was afraid like they wouldn't, associate with me or like me in a sense. Not saying I want them to like me, but yeah. I just didn't want things to be weird.
Yeah.
So I didn't want them to ask, "Well, is this your boyfriend?" So yeah. I went home.
You didn't want things to get awkward.
Exactly. I went home. My phone goes off. So my phone has been broken for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But on Sunday, it was working fine. And I got a FaceTime call. And I didn't recognize the number. And I was like, okay. I answered it. And it was her grandfather. All I saw was his face. But I could see the background was pearly white with a little bit of lavender. Like lavender, like pearly lavender.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Tell her that I'm okay. I'm fine where I'm at. And I know that I left too soon, but everything's okay, okay? And I hope that I bring you peace by telling you this." And he said that to me. And I said, I called her and I said, "Your grandfather just called me." And she goes, "Stop playing with me." And I said, "No, he called me." Well, 2 weeks before he died, me and him kind of bonded a little bit. We have a lot in common. He was a dancer. I'm a dancer. He wore the best suits. I mean, that's all he ever wore. He cooked and baked like I did, or I do. And there was this time, like right before he had died, it was 2 days before, he just grabbed his phone, faced it towards me and said, "This is my phone number. If you ever need anything, call me." And I regret that I didn't save it. I mean, I wrote it down, but I never typed it into my contacts. And so that way, when I got the call, I had this feeling that I needed to answer the phone. And when I called her, she says, "There's no way. He's gone. We just watched him be lowered." But like, it was peaceful to know that, because in a way that God uses people to bring comfort to others. And the fact that I got that phone call, and
and you said it was a FaceTime though.
It was a FaceTime.
Like you actually physically saw
his face, and it was him, his voice, and everything.
Are you sure? Like you wouldn't
it was
imagine it? Like
no, actually, my parents heard my phone go off. They didn't hear the conversation but they.
Well, your phone's like it's no longer work. It doesn't even turn on, does it?
Yeah, no. This screen.
I was gonna say is like, man, if you can go, if you only you had that phone, if only you had that phone to go back to see that number on there. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that would be
to show proof that, hey, look, he did call me. Look.
And you know what's strange? That night,
man,
it shut off.
If only you were able to take, like, because you could take video on your phone while you're doing like a FaceTime. You would have been able to do that, like during that.
That would have been so cool.
Or take a screenshot of like this call or like the call that you had.
And it was there. It was there when I looked back. It said, "Call from," and then the number. And I went over to her house and I said, "Look, he called me. Is this his number?"
Oh, you showed her?
I showed her. This was right before the phone shut off completely, and right before she said yes, that this is his phone number, it shut off. It didn't work anymore. The phone.
I know your phone was acting like crazy because your phone was sending me. It's like on the phone here. Let me see. Here, I'm gonna read the message that your phone sent me on its own, and it was really weird, and it actually scared me because I was kind of like.
You were calling me and
yeah,
I was receiving your calls, but the screen was black, so I couldn't see.
Yeah, and I was like what's going on? Like it says right here, like the text that it sent me was, emergency SOS. I called emergency services near, and then it sent me your location. And I was like, what? It's like, what's going on? It's like, you're right across the street from me. So
Yeah.
so like, what's going on? So I looked outside, and it was pouring down rain that night. It was pouring,
bad,
coming down hard. I was looking outside, and I was like, oh, no ambulance out there. So
there's no fire truck.
Yeah, and so I tried to get a hold of you and nothing. And I got a hold of your dad, and he said that your phone had.
And Gib got it too.
Yeah, did he?
And the reason why I did that is because I have you, Gib, my parents, and my sister, and Kay as well, as my emergency contacts. And so it sent that to all of my emergency contacts. And when my phone turned on, before the call from...
Yeah, because your phone was working just fine. I had just texted you probably like before your phone went completely
like crazy.
Like
and
rogue, your phone was working just fine.
It said missed call from you. I think there's 6 or 7 calls,
yeah.
And then it said missed call from the 911. I said, "Oh my god, the cops called me." And you know what?
I'm surprised they didn't send a freaking
police car.
Yeah.
That would have been scary. I would have been in prison right now for. That was.
But you would just show them your phone, be like, "My phone's acting stupid."
But that was the first time a spirit ever came to me through technology. Before, I have many stories that I physically seen a spirit, but this was the first time that I've ever got a phone call. And it was the most real experience that, and if only my phone was working and I had that evidence. Yeah. And it's something that, it's hard to believe because, some people have dreams, some people have visions. I just so happen to see things that aren't quite normal. It was an experience that's unforgettable and something that's hard to explain to a normal human mind, aka someone who's sane and not insane.
It sounds like you said Saddam Hussein.
Oh, him too.
But yeah, that's a pretty interesting story, and that you were able to show her, so you have one witness.
One witness.
You know what I mean? So it's like that you weren't going crazy. Which is kind of weird. I've never heard a story like that before. Maybe some of the listeners or viewers have, or maybe even experienced that, which I would love to hear from you if you did. So, if you do, you can contact me at Heebie-Jeebs podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and also on Twitter at Heebie-Jeebs pod.
Yes, please do. You won't regret it.
But I think a lot of what we experience, is these weird experiences that we have. I think a lot of them is just our minds, because I think the human mind is so strong, and it can phantom.
Right.
But then there's these experiences that you have, and it's kind of this has to be real.
It's something that your mind can't make up.
Yeah, because I've always been a skeptic of ghosts. I've always been is it really real? But so many people have these stories. I've seen so many, especially on YouTube. I've heard podcasts. I've heard I've seen on TV, where people have had these experiences, and I've even spoken to some family members and friends. They've had some real experiences where you're just
freaky stuff.
Yeah, crazy. And I've had some experiences that are
yeah.
I go and I've also had people witness stuff here and there. I know I remember this one time. I actually had someone there when this something actually happened to me. I don't want to talk about it now, but I think later on down the line it'll be.
Yeah, and that's how most experiences are. There's no one there when it happens, so you're stuck thinking to yourself, "Did that really happen?
Did that really happen?" Yeah.
But these, I mean,
because when you start questioning yourself and your sanity, you're kind of that's kind of whoa.
It's like you're in that white cubed room.
Yeah.
Going insane.
Well, I really enjoyed our time, but we're gonna have to go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you for having me on your Heebie-Jeebs.
And thank you for being my first co-host. We'll be having more co-hosts down the line, and he hit that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I accidentally knocked over a decoration.
Yeah, if those of you that don't know what we're talking about, if you're listening, Adrian hit the
Tombstone.
Yeah, the little tombstone Halloween thing we have set up.
Juan did a
and
very
by
good
the
job.
way, happy Halloween to everybody. And I hope you guys have a great day, morning, evening, whatever time you're listening to this or watching this. For those of you that are watching this on YouTube. But if you want to watch clips of the podcast, you can go to YouTube and just type in Heebie-Jeebs podcast. Or you could just type in the title of, whatever title of the podcast that you're listening to in the YouTube search engine, and it should pop up. If you like this video, go ahead and give us a like, hit the subscribe button, and ring-a-ling-a-ding that notification for future upcoming episodes and clips from Heebie-Jeebs podcast. For those of you that listen to the podcast, Heebie-Jeebs podcast will be coming soon to Apple Podcast and Spotify. So before we get started, I would like to have an introduction as to what this podcast is about. Basically, what I have decided to do with this podcast is document firsthand accounts of the supernatural and just the unexplainable through people of different walks of life that have nothing in common, that have had similar or different supernatural or unexplainable things happen to them, or just things that they just can't quite explain that they've witnessed. I'm hoping to build a community of like-minded people like myself and be able to tell stories that have been heard before or have never been heard before, and share these stories with other people.